Do do doom skidoo badoom skidoo badoom doom doom doo doom doom badoom. Welcome, mountain bikers. Thanks for tuning in to the Inside Line podcast. I'm your host, Sean Spomer. We're going live today. Figure why not turn this podcast into a World Cup downhill race run? Get one shot at it. We've prepped, we've trained, we even did a qualifying run on Monday. I think we're ready to rip. And if we were going to have anyone in our corner on race day, it would be today's guest, Mr. Jordi Cortes. He's the global race manager for Fox Suspension. You probably know him from their Dialed series. Jordi, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm nervous.
Yeah, dude, I am too. I'm super nervous.
Over caffeinated and nervous.
Dude, good. Well, it's nice that we're both nervous, and I don't know, we'll either fall on our face in the first rock garden or we'll cross the line an hour or so and see how it goes. But
either way, somebody will be happy.
Yeah, for sure. You're in remote Canada right now?
Yeah, I'm in Penticton, BC.
Okay. Where's that?
Middle of nowhere.
Cool.
It's like eastern edge of BC, not far from Kamloops. It's about 4.5 hours from Vancouver.
Okay. Cool.
Well, kind of dry, deserty, weird Canada. It's not what I'm used to, and not what most people picture Canada looking like.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, hopefully the moose and the squirrels can keep your internet running, and the potatoes here in Idaho keep mine going. we can make this happen. A little housekeeping for everyone out there before we go on, but we've got the live chat rolling on YouTube, and if you're subscribed to our channel, you can leave a comment in there. We'll get to some of your questions later on in the show, but yeah, you have to be subscribed just to kind of mitigate spam. And then for people who would rather listen in our podcast channel, like the audio thing, like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we'll process this when we're done. And yeah, you can listen there too. But yeah, let's get into it. Before we go too far, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate your candor and your transparency in the Dialed series. I binged on them the last couple of days. I've probably watched like 50 of them, and you and the crew do such a great job. And on Vital, I know on race weekends, we've not been consistent enough in posting those, and that's going to change. Like, they're so ridiculously good. So I just want to say thanks to you for that and your crew. But yeah, it's awesome.
I appreciate it. Honestly, so much of that is Jake and Schaefer. There's just no way we could have done it without those two. It's just such a special combination.
Yeah, their personalities are awesome as well.
Yeah.
And their excitement for the racing, it just, I don't know, everything about it is super cool. So
they're still fresh and they're still really stoked on doing what they do.
Yeah.
So it definitely keeps me motivated as well. So I just, there's something about it that I'm really stoked that we got together on.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we'll talk about all that. I've got a billion questions, talk more about Dialed, but want to get into some tech nerd goodness, and I want to know what this thing is. This prototype shock that we've seen on Jesse's bike. I think we've seen it on Richie's bike. Can you talk about this at all?
Not really. I think people pretty much know what it is. It's a shock. It's got some electronic stuff bolted onto the side of it. And it is kind of a process that we've been working on for quite a while. You've seen other electronics on our bikes. That is a big focus for me right now and has been for the last couple of months. It's going to be the future as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
And pretty excited about it. Obviously, we did something right.
Yeah. Yeah. Jesse's crushed. Can I ask why it's more like a float X body than, like an X2?
Yeah, a lot of that comes down to size and architecture. And once that thing is launched, it's a lot easier to kind of explain why certain things had to go certain ways. The X2 is a twin tube shock, a very different design. And for what we wanted this shock to do, a monotube design worked better.
Okay. Cool. All right. We'll let you off the hook on that one. Now, I want to know what this exhaust pipe is. We saw this on Greg's bike last year, and I don't ever remember hearing anything more about it.
That's the wastegate for the turbo.
For the turbo, huh?
There's actually supposed to be, that's before the wires are plugged into it. So that's actually just a coupler.
Okay.
And that is one of the rad projects we did, kind of trying to prove some things out. And really what that is a thumb operated solenoid, a little Bluetooth solenoid that shuts off compression damping.
Okay. And
so kind of a start button or a sprint button, however you want to think of it.
okay. Do you guys still use that, or was it just in certain scenarios?
We had them. We still have them, and they're still fully functional. And we've tried different versions of this at different times, and everybody, I don't know if you remember Lusa a few years ago when Bruni, everybody thought that Bruni had the little cover on his bike.
Yeah.
And in the last kind of sprinting straightaway, everybody was like, "Oh, he won because he hit that button." We've been doing this stuff for a long time, and really, as far as downhill goes, we haven't found that it makes a huge difference.
Okay.
So unless you can make it absolutely seamless as far as on off and how do I say it? Eliminate the possibility of a mistake. Mm-hmm. So like knowing that you're either firm or soft, because there's so little time in downhill. And I don't know if you remember Bruni, I think Bruni even reached up and turned something on his fork, like probably shut off compression damping. That, at least to me, in some of the testing we've done, that just isn't going to help you. And we've bounced around ideas of putting lights, putting this and that, but everything's a distraction from focusing 100% on your run. And the benefits might not be there yet. Yet is the key word.
Okay. So still potentially working on stuff?
Potentially, yeah. Okay. Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Well, you're off the hook with the prototype stuff for now. Get on. We'll do some quick rapid fire stuff to kind of warm up, but chamois or no chamois?
Chamois. Bibs.
Okay. Like all the time, mostly?
95% of the time, unless I forgot something.
Okay, cool. Coil or air?
Ooh, both.
You have to pick one.
If I'm riding here, it's air shock all the way.
Okay.
If I had to pick one, I'll go air, because if it has to go cross-platform like XC and trail and DH, air shock.
Okay, sounds good. Cake or pie?
Damn.
That was my wife's question, by the way.
That's a good one. I'll go pie.
Okay, sweet. Tequila or absinthe?
I can't remember that many good evenings with tequila, but I can't remember any good evenings on absinthe. But okay. I'm going to pick absinthe. We had a great Santa Cruz Christmas party with a couple of bottles of absinthe that I brought home.
Okay, cool. Downhill or enduro?
To do what? To participate in, or anything I want?
participate, and then what do you prefer to watch or
I
follow?
love doing enduro stuff. It's so fun to me. I'm not a racer. Like I stress out, I fuck everything up, I forget things. Be like, oh, I'm gonna do this, this, and this, and then I get there and I don't do any of it.
Huh.
But it's really fun for me to stay involved in that kind of process, just to kind of understand what other people are going through. But as far as work and watching, it's downhill all the way.
Okay, cool. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Um, I think a strange mix of both. I'm not particularly extroverted. I don't really go out. I'm not much of a partier, but I'm also not afraid to share pretty much anything. I don't have a lot of shame or it's like I don't care.
Cool.
But like I'm not out at the clubs every night.
Okay. Yeah, there are a couple of those dials where like, yeah, Jordy's already in bed.
I think I haven't been up past 9 o'clock in the last 3 weeks.
Hey, good for you.
Yeah.
Recharge. All right, last one. Best coffee on the World Cup circuit,
Oof.
because you're always mixing stuff up. Are you bringing that from home? Are you getting stuff locally?
Generally bring something from home or get stuff from certain people. Like Satellite Coffee in Morzine is always, it's amazing when we're in Leger or Morzine area and we get beans from them every once in a while. He also made a bunch of syndicate beans with each rider's different blend in, which is pretty cool in Leger.
That's rad. What do you do? Just like ask them what they like?
Yeah. So I think we still have some somewhere around here, but
Okay.
Mont Saint Anne, interestingly enough, had amazing coffee. There were 2 coffee stands set up this year: Bosque Velo Cafe,
Okay.
and another one that I forgot.
Okay. Oh, that's all right. Good enough.
Everywhere else is pretty crappy. Like everybody thinks Europe is so amazing for food and coffee.
Yeah. And you don't think so?
It's just nah, especially not certain places.
How about Snowshoe?
Snowshoe had Starbucks, which love it or hate it, at least you know what you're getting.
Yeah.
And it's not, if you're a snob, it's bad. But it's not bad coffee. Like you could do far worse.
Sure.
And we all have, I'm sure.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Well, in typical inside line fashion, I've got 4 trillion questions here, but can you kind of give us the rundown on how you got into mountain bikes, kind of your first bike, and then sort of working up into where you are now?
Cool. That's a long story.
Hey, my internet and bandwidth can take it, so I'm down to hear it all.
I don't know how much internet we get here. It might shut off at any moment. Didn't Canada have a beaver chew through an internet line last year?
I don't know. Sounds plausible.
I'm sure if you Google it, there's something about beaver chewing through internet. Okay, so I've always ridden bikes. Maybe a late start to actually learning how to ride bikes, you know, a couple of years later than most people. But I started with BMX stuff where I grew up, or where I was born in Berkeley. We had a decent kind of trail riding group, and we would actually take the bus up on BMX bikes and trail ride down through the parks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
And then from there, kind of got into freestyle stuff. We built a half pipe at a friend's house and goofed around like that.
Cool.
I think I've just always been fascinated with dirt and trails. I grew up riding a little bit of moto as well. And then sometime through high school, I was still riding BMX bikes, freestyle stuff. I think right after high school, I bought a Shogun mountain bike
Hmm.
with Shimano Dior stuff on it. And that was my first actual mountain bike. And from there, I never really looked back.
And
Um,
this is all in Berkeley area?
this is still in Berkeley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like an hour, a little bit more than an hour north of Santa Cruz, where I have been for quite a while now. And I kind of got away from the mountain bike stuff a little bit. I was riding a bunch of real mountain biking in Berkeley, and North Bay is not amazing. It's like you get Marin and Santa Rosa, stuff like that, which is, it's fine if it's all you got, but it's not something you want to ride every day. So started racing road bikes, started doing crit stuff and track stuff, a lot of cyclocross. And that kind of brought me to Santa Cruz. I was working for Specialized, working for their cross program. And then I started working for their mountain bike program, the XC stuff with Leah Davison and Max Plaxton.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's funny because my first few World Cups, I didn't really even know downhill stuff was going on, even though I came from a downhill background, which I completely skipped over. So I raced quite a few Norba rounds and local rounds, doing downhill stuff, cross country too. At the time, you kind of did everything. This is back in the early days.
I was going to say, can you give away the years? Because everyone seems to joke about your age and no one knows how old you are.
I think that was pre-COVID. COVID put like 10 years on me. Now everybody's like, shit, that dude's old. My bad. Man, I remember, I think one of my last nationals was Utah or Snoqualmie. It was Snoqualmie, I think.
Okay.
Probably really early 2000s, still Norbas. And I was riding a Carpiel with a Rissy fork.
It's sick.
Yeah, that bike was way ahead of its time.
That's some hella NorCal right there.
That's hella NorCal. And my teammate at the time, I think I was in the start gate, and the guy's like, "Hey, I think your teammate just broke her back." I was like, "Fuck, thanks for that one." And then it's like 3, 2, 1, go.
Oh.
And
was it true?
Got down. I was like, "Yeah, she actually broke her back. She's fine."
Okay.
But I was like, I don't know if I care enough to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm not good enough. So it was kind of one of those things where you're like,
What class were you in?
Something else. At the time, they had semi-pros.
Yep.
So it's like average rider.
No, semi-pro back then was legit.
It was. It was still kind of trail riding, though. Like they hadn't put these huge jumps in yet. Like that was just starting to evolve.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, man, I'm not good enough to do this. I still suck at jumping. I'm so bad.
And so, I was just gonna say, how'd you progress?
That's when I started riding road bikes.
Okay.
Which was great. I love road riding and cross racing. There's such a huge cross scene in NorCal, or there was at the time. And traveled to a bunch of World Cups with cross team, which was phenomenal. You think downhill parties are wild. Go to Cross Worlds in Coxside. It's like, it's mayhem. Like there's people dressed up in suits that are passed out on the sidewalk in a pool of vomit. Just the wildest things. And then again, went to work for Specialized and was doing their mountain bike stuff. I spent like half a year kind of working for Show Air Cannondale when they did a joint venture with Cannondale Factory. And that didn't go so well. I think that's the only job I've ever been fired from.
Oh, really? Was this mostly on like kind of mechanic side of things?
Yeah, being a mechanic.
Okay. And dude, how'd you get fired?
My rider at the time just kind of stopped racing. It just burned out, and my contract was to support that rider.
Hmm.
And it was a pretty strange program too. There was a lot of like strange incestuous relationships going on with the main sponsor there, and I was kind of on the outside. And I got a call one day like, "We don't need you anymore. Send back your stuff."
Is this like mid-season?
Yeah, basically.
Gnarly. So what'd you do?
I'd already been talking to the guy that hired me at Fox, Mark Fitzsimmons, who's also mountain bike legend, been around forever.
Heard of that guy? Yeah.
Yeah. Fitz is, he started the race department at Fox. And we had similar approach to riding where we rode road bikes and cyclocross and trail bikes. And I think we always saw each other at cross events or XC events.
Okay.
And he'd been saying that he needed to hire somebody. And that's the end of that. I got hired at Fox knowing nothing.
Huh. And how long ago was that?
I think that's been 7 years now.
Okay.
And I remember my first day there, the guy that was teaching me was taking shocks apart and just pulling piston apart, put all the valves down, be like, "Oh, this, and this." And I'm like, fuck, I'm never going to understand this stuff. There's no way I'm going to figure this out. And at the time, this guy, Mike V, who's also old Fox legend, he's like, "You'll get it. Don't worry about it. Within a year, you'll be taking this stuff apart without a manual or without looking up directions." And he was right.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And what was your progression then to get to where you are now, like as, global race team manager?
Well, I remember I think the first race was South Africa. My first World Cup with Fox. I've been to like a Southridge race to try to practice.
Okay, I was gonna say, had you traveled much?
Learn how to work
that?
with people. I'd done World Cup stuff, but as a mechanic, totally different.
Yep.
I had no clue who was racing downhill. I was still fully XC at the time. And Fitz was like, "Yeah, we'll all do these races. Just we'll do South Africa and run you through everything. We'll figure it out." And I think we did South Africa, and after that we got home. And he was like, "Yeah, I don't think I'm going to travel much anymore. I think you'll be good."
Were you ready for that?
No, but I got ready pretty quickly. And at the time, it was 2 people doing World Cup stuff and EWS stuff.
Oh.
It was myself and Kolya, who's still at Fox but not doing race stuff anymore.
Okay.
And every once in a while, we bring in one other person or get some help somewhere.
Were the needs as big then as they are now?
No, it was way smaller.
Okay.
And product was a lot simpler. We're still talking RC2s that are bone simple. Things just hadn't progressed to the point that they are now.
Okay.
Where we have 5 or 6 people working, and you're talking like 100 shock services a day. So we've probably doubled or tripled our amount of product, as well as the people that are there to work.
Dude, gnarly. So I kind of just want to get into, how did it progress to doing the Dialed series and you becoming an internet superstar? Like, was this your idea? Like, how did this all shake out? Because it seems like a lot to take on. I feel like
most. Yeah, it is a lot. I mean, just doing a World Cup is a lot. I really feel like this stuff started with the Syndicate videos. With Steel City Media doing the This Is PD episodes, and then they went to Syndicate. And Jobo kind of did, if you saw those Between Two Puzzlers videos, he did a few of them.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of the launching point for these somewhat behind the scenes videos. And my new boss at the time, Fitz, has quit in the meantime and is now working at TRP.
Okay.
And yeah, we just skipped an entire stage of my life.
Dude, let's go back into it. I've got time.
Damn. Okay. So Fitz quits
Yeah.
unexpectedly. And
Okay,
there's
so
a lot of
Fitz puts you in charge, stays home for a little bit, and then bounces a couple years later or something?
probably 5 years later.
Okay.
So I think this is my second year as management.
Okay.
So Fitz quits, and my new boss is like, "Hey, how would you like to take over Fitz's job?" And holy shit, I was terrified. I still have no idea what I'm doing. I'm a horrible manager.
Okay.
No, I'm fine with the tech stuff, and I'm great. Like, I love the stuff, but the management side of things is foreign to me. I don't understand it.
And
I'm too wrapped up in what I would do and not like looking at what other people might think or do.
is that kind of like the logistics and setting up and hiring people, like those kind of items?
Hiring, firing, planning, HR stuff. We're a big corporation.
Yeah.
You just dealing with people's weirdness and attitudes and trying to keep your team happy, and then as well as trying to keep on top of tech stuff and pointing everybody in the right direction there. Luckily, I have some other people that we kind of broke Fitz's roll up since I'm still traveling and doing all that stuff as well. So we get a lot of help there.
Okay. Do you kind of final say though, like you determine who gets hired for like with your team?
With my team, yeah, probably.
Okay.
I mean, we're still a corporation, so things still have to go up the ladder.
Yeah.
But yeah,
okay.
I get to pick.
All right. So, okay. Fitz bounces and you're into his spot.
And I'm into his spot. Yeah. Then what? I don't know. It's been then basically we had, I think that was the first year of COVID.
Wow.
Okay. Which was a really weird way to start a new job. We had test camp in Lusa, which we'd been doing for a couple of years in Portugal. And I think near about 2/3 of the way through test camp, we started getting these reports of things shutting down. And I remember we had that pretty cool president there for a while. Then I remember hearing that the borders to the United States were shutting.
Okay.
On March 15th, I think. And there wasn't a whole lot of news. Things were pretty remote in Portugal, in a tiny little town there. And some people are like, everything's fucked. We're done. You got to get out of here. Yeah. And other people are like, I think even at the time I was like, come on now.
Yeah.
Like, how bad could this really be?
Mm-hmm.
But then started hearing about flights getting canceled, countries shutting borders, and stressed out a bit. We had to pack the truck up, get everybody home without incident. And then I had to book a ticket and fly home. And I made it home on the day they supposedly shut down United States, which then we kind of found out wasn't necessarily true, that you were probably going to get back home anyway. But it was a weird and stressful time and a strange way to start a new season and a new job.
Yeah. And then was there uncertainty if the season was even going to go on back then?
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much didn't. I think we had a few double races near the end of the year that time. But that was the second year of Dialed, and that was the first year of Jake and Schaefer.
Okay.
Because I remember having a conversation that we weren't going to be able to travel, so we didn't know what we were going to do with the series. And we kind of just left it up to Jake and myself to figure out a way to keep Dialed going.
What's that like? You're trying to juggle the race team specifics, or like dealing with the athletes and the tech, and now you have to handle video production too.
It's weird. I mean, Jake does all the production, really.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do? I sit there and talk about stuff. But
it's on your mind.
Oh yeah, for sure. And behind the scenes there was hilarious. We'd have a video due Friday. We'd be talking Thursday, like, well, what do you think about this? Yeah, we could do that. We'd sit down for a couple hours in the backyard and shoot a video, and then he'd edit all night, and boom.
Pulled it off. Everyone was just kind of improvising the whole time, I guess.
Yeah. For me, it was great. Like, that seems like a horrible thing to say, but it was such a cool experience to be able to do that.
Did it?
And I think we made some good connections with people.
Yeah.
During those 2 years.
Yeah, for sure. And did it make moving forward easier when you don't have this remote kind of
oh man, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I remember trying to film things on my own. Luckily, my cousin is pretty artistic. She's a graphic designer as well and does photography. So I'd always be like, Rosie, how do we do this? Can you hold the camera? I need to do this.
That's awesome.
And then put it in a Dropbox and send it to Jake and be like, yeah, that's cool, but could you film in Pano? Ah, damn it.
Yep. So much to think about. Did you know where you were going to be an internet superstar?
I'm still not a superstar.
You are, dude. Don't even. We talked about this before the show actually started.
I'm a small fish in a non-existent pond.
No way. No. Talk about your West Virginia experience.
Oh yeah, that was cool. I don't know, like, the fans in West Virginia are next level. Like, they know everything. They know dialed stats. They know Jake and Schaefer. That's where Jake and Schaefer really, watching fans come up and interact with them and just being like, you guys are amazing. And it's true. Like, their production quality for two young guys doing it out of their house, it's wild.
Yeah, it's super neat.
And I have to hand it to my boss, Marshall, that he found Jake. And at the time, I was still pushing for somebody that I knew. I was like, I don't want to bring some weirdo in that doesn't know the mountain bike scene. And then I watched Jaker's Maker's video. He did a video for Race Face. I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Whatever. Luckily, nobody listened to me and hired Jake anyway. And it's by far the best decision they've ever made.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, you say you're not a celebrity or anything, but I want to pull this up from your Instagram. Someone watched Dialed and saw that you didn't have a bike. It was lost in shipping. And they offered to give you their bike to ride in Lenzerheide. Like, come on, that's big time.
I guess. I don't know. I didn't see the bike. Maybe it was all clapped out.
It could have been. And you said, you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't borrow, other people's nice things, which I don't blame you on that, but
I hate borrowing people's bikes.
Yeah, I would too. Do you have any other like random star experiences like that? Just someone comes up out of nowhere, like, whoa, you're Jordi.
Where was it? I think Jake and I were driving through the Mont Blanc tunnel. We were pulling up to the checkpoint, and just some random guard there was like, Jordi from Dialed.
No way.
And Jake and I both looked at each other like, holy shit, this is the next level.
Dude, that's awesome. I want to bring up some shots of your squad here, and like, how did you pick who's on the team? Like, is there an application on the Fox site that says work with Jordi? Like, it seems like you all get along.
Sometimes there is
really well.
We do get along pretty well. It's hard. I mean, this team has morphed pretty organically. Pascal, who works in the German office, was hired by his predecessor before I started managing the team. And then Taj worked for us as a contractor for a while. He was mechanicking for the Cube enduro team. And then we kind of were like, hey, if he ran a suspension center in Dunkeld. So we were like, oh, well, this makes sense if you want to come work some events with us. And he was stoked on that. Luckily, his girlfriend, fiance, was also totally mechanically competent, as well as just an organizational mastermind. And she started coming to the races, just putting on stickers on the forks. And little by little, it's like, well, you can service stuff. You're perfectly competent. And so now those two are a key part of the Fox family, and they're full-time employees.
Dude, that's
so
super
they're
cool.
Fox UK now. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do the job duties break down? Sorry, go ahead.
The job, well, I think that's where my managerial success is pretty limited. We really rely on people figuring out their own way. Like, if you're strong here, do that. If you're strong here, do that. And if you need help here, then somebody else does that. And that's kind of how we figure it out. People can bounce around and do different things at different times because you don't really want to get stuck doing one thing all the time. Generally, shocks, which are the biggest pain in the ass, are the hardest part. So usually we have two people that are really good at doing shock work because there's so many of them and they take so much longer than fork services do.
Is it just because they're so intricate?
Yeah, they're so intricate. You need so many tools, so many pieces to do anything. And then when you include valving and tuning things, that they're time intensive.
Okay. How does it work out if a rider or a team shows up with a new bike, or maybe Lori's using a new linkage? Do they come to you to get the shock built and tuned? Do you work with them ahead of time? Like, kind of what's that process like? Because it seems like everyone has something new at some point.
It's a pretty loose process depending on the team. Some teams, as they're figuring out a problem, are like, hey, we're having this problem. And then we kind of identify whether it's a shock problem or a design issue.
Okay.
And plenty of teams will go back and design specific parts to address a problem. And in that case, it's great. We can work through the whole thing. We have an understanding of what's coming. Some teams just pop in with new product and like, oh, we've got this now. And you're like, cool. What does it do? Like, I don't know. Do you have any kind of ideas? I'm like, no.
Is the expectation that they just run the same shock they've been on, or are they like, hey, it needs a new shock?
I think the expectation with suspension is that whatever the problem is, it's the suspension's fault, because it's one of the few things that's still a mystery to a lot of people. So if you don't understand something, it's really easy to blame it. And we kind of get ourselves in that situation by offering this service of tuning and setup. And I've seen it happen over and over again where you get a rider for the first time that comes in and they've never checked air pressure. They don't know anything. And you do a setup and they're like, holy shit, that's night and day. And then next thing you know, they're back 20 minutes later. And then again, and then again, and then again. Okay. It's like, well, you did it once. Can't you just keep doing that same thing?
Yeah.
But that's just not the case. Like, at a certain point, we're done. we can't do anymore. Whatever problems you're having, there's other areas to address.
Okay.
It's not always suspension.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I have. Like, you feel like you can put your foot down and be like, hey, we've tried, we're done.
With some people, you can, yeah.
Yeah.
With other people, unfortunately, you just end up kind of pushing them to the side because they don't listen.
Okay.
And it's a very limited amount of time and a limited resource. So unfortunately, we just can't deal with everybody all the time and sit there for an hour talking to somebody that, in my mind, just didn't do their job. When you show up and you don't know your fork pressure or your shock pressure or where any of your settings are, and then you're asking somebody to basically do your work for you, I have a hard time with that.
Okay.
Like, I've told people to go away, come back when you have an idea of what you're doing.
Okay. All right. Well, that segues nicely into where I want to go. Sorry, I hit the wrong button. And so I'm not trying to make any question today seem like it's you versus a rider. Like, I know you both want to win.
Yeah, that's okay.
You both want success. But dude, did your job description say like you need a psychology degree? Like I said, like I've been binging the Dialed series, the last few days, and your patience is ridiculous. And maybe because I've watched so many back to back to back, your patience shines through, and it almost seems like a little bit of Groundhog's Day, where it's just like, okay, you're at this race, here comes this rider asking a question, and the discussions all seem so similar to some degree. Does it feel that way to you?
Yes. We've definitely used Groundhog Day to describe the situation.
Okay.
It is the same thing every day. And I feel like that points to the psychological side of bike racing, that it's really still down to the individual to do the job. Suspension can help, setup helps, good frames help, but at the end of the day, it's the rider and the rider's brain that are doing the most work. Right? Like, you pick any of the top riders, they've been doing this for a long time, and the process is always the same. It's like, you show up, you do track walk, you get a practice run. My bike feels like shit, I can't ride this. Soften everything up. Oh, that's better. Next day, bike's way too soft, can't ride this.
And that's because they're getting faster?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's because you're getting faster, you're learning lines. And it also goes back to like testing on your home trails just doesn't really work, because you learn everything. And I've done it over and over again where I put something on and been like, wow, this is amazing. And then you go somewhere awkward or that you just don't know, and you ride and you're like, this is horrible. There's so much of it that's mental. So you feel comfortable, the bike usually feels good.
Okay. And that's kind of what I have. Where's this question at here? Sorry, where's it at?
No, go ahead. I feel like my answers are bouncing all over the place anyway.
No way, they're good. And I actually had that question based on watching Dialed about the home track setup. You bring that up, and do you feel like riders just can't get to a World Cup pace at home, or is it just a matter of the tracks being different?
I don't think you can. I don't think you can push yourself that hard. Even in our test situations, like we'll be in Lusa, which is a World Cup track.
Mm-hmm.
And even on day 2, with riders going as hard as they can, we still end up changing things on race days.
Okay.
And I think there's a lot of small factors that contribute to that. And like, if you look at the way a lot of moto tests are run and guys doing lap after lap and knocking off times within 0.01 seconds over and over and over again, That doesn't really happen with bikes.
Is it because the repetition's not possible?
I don't think the repetition is possible. And I think the bike fundamentally has issues with how small a percentage it is of the rider's weight and the fact that it's basically purely gravity based. Like the rider is such a massive part of the equation that if you're feeling a little bit off, that's it. And if you make a mistake, you're still relying on gravity to reaccelerate you or to put you back where you need to go. So I just don't think that consistency is possible.
Okay. Yeah. So I found the question like, do you think a lot of the requests you get are almost psychosomatic? I think I'm feeling something when maybe they're not.
Yes.
And
almost like 90%.
okay. And do you just work with them and try and talk them off the ledge or just adjust accordingly? Like, because a lot of the stuff you're doing, at least, you know, watching the dialed stuff is one click here, one click there. Like, does that matter that much? And I'm not trying to discount what these elite level athletes feel, because I believe they can feel those kind of things, but where does it end after a while?
Well, we'll start with one click. Like, yes, one click makes a difference.
Okay.
The big question is, just because you can feel it doesn't mean that it's better. Right? It's like, I did a click. Oh yeah, I can feel that. But is it better?
Do riders seem to think if they felt it, it's better?
Generally, yeah. And that's if we diverge again, that's a big problem with riders doing testing. A lot of them aren't capable of deciding whether something's better or worse. It's
Okay.
like you just progress, but you've never gone back and said, oh, here's my original setup. Have I really made any progress?
Okay.
And that's the foundation of bracketing, which is what we always preach, is like A, B, A, A, B, A, and then go back and try to just, each time you have to ask yourself, did this make a valid change? And if it didn't, you need to go back. You don't keep progressing on that branch of the tree that's worse and worse and worse. You get yourself into trouble. You always have to have a reset. And we see that a lot with data systems.
Okay. And that's
Of
go ahead.
people
Sorry.
not really grasping how these things work. And they just keep doing things. It's like you make a change and it's like, I'm not really sure. But instead of going back, you make another change. And then you go, oh yeah, maybe that was better. And then on top of that, you make another change. Now you're lost.
Okay.
But the data says the speeds are fine and everything's okay. But you need to trust your brain as well. Data can't tell you if it works. It can only tell you what it's doing.
Okay. So yeah, kind of twofold there is, if it feels good to the rider, but it's not faster, is that preferred? Because like you said, if they're comfortable, they're happy. And then with the data thing, you have ridiculous years of experience with this. Do you feel like with data coming around that people are going to second guess what you say because their chart says this, whereas you may say that?
I guess the first part is, I think if it feels good, you're generally going to be faster because you're comfortable.
Okay.
But you can also see patterns sometimes of riders that have gotten so used to something that they're going to get stuck in their progression somewhere because they've adapted to a certain situation. And it's going to take a lot of practice to get out of that rut. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
There was one rider that always rode brake levers pointed way down, like excessively low.
Okay.
And if you take a snapshot of all the riders of the World Cup, there's probably like 5 degrees of difference in lever setup. This is a small little nitpicky thing, but it makes a difference. Unless you look at Loris and his levers are flat. Like there's a few guys that are excessive. But that's one of those things you look at and it's different than the norm. You have to address that problem. And that's going to take a lot of time. So that's one of those things where the rider's comfortable, but at a certain point, that's going to hinder their progress because it's a flaw in the whole dynamics of the bike.
Like their general setup.
Right.
Yeah.
But you move the levers up and they're like, oh, this is horrible. I can't ride like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take, you're going to have to go back. You're going to have to reprocess. You're going to have to retrain because you've probably ridden your levers down for 10 years.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, your hands just aren't going to be able to hold the bars at the speeds that the top riders are going.
Down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you ever talk to them about tire pressure? And the only reason I bring this up is I think the Fort William dialed on the first day, there were a bunch of people that came up and said, hey, my fork's pinging around, it's bouncing off. It doesn't feel good. Is that tire pressure sometimes? Because they're like, I'm at Fort Bill. I'm going to, bump things up so I don't flat. Like, do you get into those discussions with them too?
Not usually. Tire pressure is one of the few things that we'll look just to make sure it's not ridiculous.
Okay.
But we should be able to adapt for most tire pressures. And most riders are that tire pressure is one of those things that's been drilled into people from an early age, I think. I think most riders are pretty good with where they need to run tire pressure.
Okay.
And they are looking around and talking to other people and getting kind of a group consensus sometimes as well. And I think we should be able to make suspension work with most necessary tire pressures. The ones that we do kind of keep an eye on are when tire companies come out with another casing or a different compound or some things that could make an unexpected difference to the rider without them really thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like I've had recently a couple guys, and maybe it was even Fort William, that were like, man, I can't keep the bike online, this and that. We went over all the settings, everything was good. And I was completely dumbfounded as to what the problem was. This was over the phone as well, which makes it even worse. Then it turns out they were riding a new prototype tire that had a different sidewall.
Okay.
And it's like, well, come on now. There you go.
Yeah.
If you go back to the other one, does it feel good? It's like, oh yeah, it feels great.
So that's your tire. Yeah.
Yeah.
And does it take the riders long to trust you?
I think it depends on the rider. Some just want to hand it off and do what you do. And some really want to be involved. And then some want to be involved and then not listen to you or go do their own thing or do a little bit of what you said. And like, I get it. It's a stressful situation for everybody, especially the person that's risking their life to try to get down the hill as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So if you don't trust me, then do what you're going to do. But also at a certain point, if you keep asking me and you don't do it, we're probably going to end that relationship relatively soon.
Okay.
Like, what point is there in asking me if you're not going to listen?
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to throw any trust out the window for someone, but have you ever told a rider you changed something and you didn't?
I've had this question a lot, and
okay.
I can't think of a time I've ever done that. to me, that does violate trust issues.
For sure.
But if I'm not capable of telling that rider straight up that I don't think they should change anything, then I shouldn't be working with them.
Okay.
Like I don't have a problem saying I think you're fine.
Yeah.
Or saying I'm stuck. I don't know what else to do.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. All right. Vital Raw, every time that thing comes out, it's full of orange forks. Like, how do you keep track of all this? Like, you guys are all over the track. There's so many of them. Like, look at this pile right here. How do you do it?
It's wild. We don't have the capability to do what we're doing. Somehow we pull through every time. But the amount of work for track walk day and generally the day after now is just, it's wild. Those guys just bury themselves all day.
Yeah.
And they're really fast. Like these are some of the best technicians in the world. And it still takes all day just to get through a pile of forks. And we've done it to ourselves.
I was going to say, do you wish there were fewer?
Oh, I guarantee you, I wish you there were fewer, but our sales guys are not wishing that.
Gotcha. Cool. Is there a hierarchy of who you deal with? Teams, riders, like kind of how do you prioritize who gets what?
Yeah, there's definitely a hierarchy. And we get a lot of shit for that, I think. Or I hear little snippets of comments of like, yeah, Fox pays so much attention to this guy or this guy. It's like, well, I mean, we are the race department at the end of the day. We're there to win races. That's our job. And I'm going to spend more time on somebody that can win than somebody that can't. But the second part of that is I'm going to spend more time with people that are receptive and I think I can make a difference with than people that I can't. There's a very limited amount of time to get stuff done at a race.
Yeah.
So we have to prioritize.
Okay.
And
do you work with mechanics more than riders for some teams? Or is it usually the rider coming to you?
We try not to. We really want first person information. Every once in a while that happens that a mechanic will come by and say, oh, this is the feedback. This is what we're thinking. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and try that. But you always lose something in the communication between rider to mechanic to us. Unfortunately, that's the way XC has gone completely. Like we almost never see riders. You just see a mechanic bring in a bunch of forks. Yeah. And it's a bummer. Like we get knocked so many times for not covering XC, which isn't the focus of Dialed. Dialed is a downhill program.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it goes.
Yeah. But you're still working on cross country stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. But we rarely see those guys. So even if we did do a Dialed XC, it would be really boring. I wish that wasn't the case because I think it's such a rad sport, but it's like, if you guys can't even bother to come in, then what are we going to do?
Yeah. Is it as technical or tricky? I mean, they just kind of like keep it firm and let me run.
You'd be surprised. Like 90% of the time this year was adding like 20 PSI to a fork.
20?
Yeah. Like just so far off. But then they'll come in once and they'll be like, oh, it just feels like shit. It's bottoming everywhere. It's like, well, yeah, there's even a sticker on the back of your fork. You're not even close. And then you try one thing and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, and they never come back. So it's just kind of disheartening to work with that side, even though I'd love to do more of it.
Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah. Kind of going down that road. What are the differences and challenges of, working with downhill athletes in those races and first Enduro World Series? Like, are you spread thin? Are you hitting every one as best possible? Like both series?
Yeah. Yeah, we do. Unless if there's a conflict and we can't find somebody to cover it, then a World Cup is going to take priority. It's just more maintenance intensive.
Okay.
Um, enduro is really hard because it isn't one specific track over and over again. It's whatever, 6 or 8, and they can all be completely different, and you might not even get a chance to ride them, so you're kind of guessing. Um, and enduro has gotten so big and so difficult. Like these 8-hour days, you're talking about guys that are basically XC athletes riding downhill speeds.
Yeah.
Right? It's like it's just wild how much they have to train. So you're also dealing with that of like riders having to ride all the time, all day.
So you can never work on their stuff.
You can't really work on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And enduros in general, EWSs are these little condensed things with kind of disjointed pit areas and no real schedule. So we're just trying to fit stuff in where we can.
Okay. Are those riders like more independent or working with their mechanics more than you to some degree compared to a World Cup?
Probably, yeah. I think there's a better relationship sometimes with rider and mechanic at EWSs. A lot of mechanics will go out for practice days with teams. A lot of those mechanics do both downhill and enduro as well.
Yep.
So you'll see the same guys, which is cool. I think for the top riders, at least for the top EWS riders, most of them come directly to me or will message me or some form. I have a pretty decent relationship with most of them.
Okay. Are they looking for comfort more than kind of like downhill performance compared to, a downhill race? Because they have to survive, like you said, so much time on the bike.
Yeah. I think that's probably safe. Like that's the hardest balance of pure speed versus the ability to hold on to it for whatever it's going to be, 45 minutes of descending plus transfer stages and overall fatigue. And when you don't know a trail really well, you hit every single bump.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely that's the hard balance of comfort versus speed.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. Do dry or wet conditions make your job more miserable?
Ooh, that's 2 different answers. If it's wet, usually the weather sucks. So we're just sitting inside the pit in
Just
the
all
rain.
mopey.
Just mopey, and probably means you didn't go for a ride in the morning because it was raining. Motivation's usually at all-time low. But we also don't see riders when it's really wet and slippery because there's nothing we can really do.
Okay.
Like if you look through stuff, people are always like, oh, when it's wet, I slow my rebound down 1 click and I do this. You're full of shit. None of that makes any difference.
Okay. I have that question buried in here somewhere. In Dial, you said it's stupid to change your settings on a mud day. Why?
Because mud is already this isolator, right? It's making everything vague. It's adding weight to your bike.
Okay.
And you're not really going to get any extra grip or support out of your suspension. It's all tires. I mean, if the thing is just wildly stiff and you have some stupid setup, then yeah. But modern setups are really versatile and work really well.
Okay.
So when you're fighting for grip and you've slowed your rebound down 2 clicks and now all of a sudden your bottom bracket's way lower than it used to be and your small bump's gone, you're not doing yourself any favors. You're trying to get used to a muddy track that doesn't have any feeling, and you changed your suspension so you don't remember what it feels like anymore. So I think the best thing you can do when it's wet is do well with your tire choices and tire pressures and carry on.
Okay. Cool. This probably applies more to EWS than downhill, but do the ambient temperatures, top versus bottom, really impact how the bike's going to perform? And if so, like, do you try and compensate for it?
It shouldn't have a huge effect.
Okay.
We have had some issues in the past of like 40-degree days on long tracks. And we've had some, usually you'll notice it in rebound, like rebound speeds will pick up a little bit. Forks doesn't really happen just because of the surface area and the size of damper and the amount of oil and everything in there. But with shocks, sometimes you get a small difference. But I don't think we've ever really tried to compensate by slowing anything down in the beginning.
Yep.
Normally it's better to have everything working really well towards the beginning. And it's like you go in and something's different in those first few turns. I think that can really set up your mental state for the rest of the track.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas once you're towards the bottom and everything's gone well, you're like, this is good. I can do this.
Okay.
The changes kind of mask themselves in your emotional state, I think.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. How much bottom out is too much bottom out?
That's track dependent. There's always a few tracks like Lords. I remember just being so hard because there were like two places where there was absolutely nothing you could do.
Yeah.
But the rest of the track was, I figured that's like off that rock drop kind of.
Yep.
And that's one of the tracks. Like everything else, you need this nice supple suspension, and then there's two spots where you're just buried. And that's one of the big things we do towards like the end of a setup where the rider will be like, well, there's this one spot. And you really have to be clear on, do you want to change your entire setup to manage this one spot? Or do you want to manage that one spot and have 95% good? And sometimes you're just gonna hit that bottom.
You just have to deal with the hole.
Yep.
Yeah. Is there an acceptable amount of bottom out? Like, you see on forums and stuff like, oh, I bottom out 4 or 5 times a day, or I never bottom out. Like, do you have a preference, like on your personal bike? Like, do you bottom very often?
I think you probably want to, I mean, if you're riding, this goes back so deep too. It depends on the rider and it depends on where you're riding. If you set up your bike by bottom out, you're going to have problems. Set your bike up normally and work from there. Do your sag, do your volume, do your compressions. I think at home, I bottom the shock most rides, which is normal. You should definitely be deeper in the travel in the back than in the front.
Mm-hmm.
I rarely bottom that fork unless you've made some kind of little mistake somewhere.
Okay.
It's a miserable feeling.
It is. That's awesome. Are you ever able to get up on the track during practice, or are you kind of stuck in the pits?
Pretty much stuck, because if I'm on track, I'll miss somebody.
Okay.
Somebody will have a question or a problem or something like that. So yeah, it's a little bit boring sometimes.
Okay. And then on race day, like you're watching from the truck, watching the live feed, or are you out on the, like by the finish line?
Depends on the venue. We'll hang in the pit until the last rider, or our last rider, goes up, just in case there's some issue. And then once they're up at the top, we'll usually go to the finish line. Recently, we've just been watching it in the truck because the coverage is good, and you can just sit there and watch TV, which seems really weird, but there have been a few events that didn't even have screens to watch, so you're just kind of stuck. I know Fort William, we always go to the finish and watch on the big screen, which is cool. Snowshoe, I don't think we even watched it because they didn't have any screens up at the top and there's
Oh
no
man.
phone service.
Yeah.
And then the bars, there was a geo restrict on it, so they couldn't show it.
Jeez.
It was such a disaster.
Oh man. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, do you get downtime during the season? Like, are you ever able to be alone? Like, do you need to be alone?
Um, I get some. I am really bad at ignoring people. So I'll answer messages, emails, texts, whatever, pretty consistently, almost all the time. Um, I think, by nature, a solitary person. I have no problem being alone most of the time. Uh, I like riding by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love riding with friends as well, but especially World Cup times, like just going out on your own for an hour in the morning is kind of cathartic and just kind of resets you a little bit because you're around people all the fucking time.
Yeah.
Breakfast to dinner, you have people with you.
Does do you prioritize getting out on your bike? Like it seems like you do at the races.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Okay. And we structure it so that I want everybody that works with us to bring a bike and to get some exercise and to be involved. I don't understand why you do this if you weren't riding bikes.
For sure. So see, you're perfect manager. That's all anyone wants to do is ride bikes.
Yeah. I don't think you hear that from many people.
Tell me about what you and I talked about before we came on about just end of the season for you and how you're just kind of broke down, you get sick. Like,
yeah, I guess I'm probably not the greatest at dealing with stress. I internalize a lot of things, I think, and by the end of the year, I'm definitely burned out. I can't remember a year I haven't come home and gotten sick and just been shut in for the month. I feel bad because I'm at my girlfriend's now in Canada, so I flew home after the season, did some work, and then drove up here, and I haven't done anything. I mean, we've ridden bikes, but it's like I get in and turn on the TV, sit on the couch, open up a bag of chips, and that's it.
You need it though. Like you're pinned for months on end.
Yeah. I don't know. I could probably do a better job managing stress and figuring things out, but
like I said, like you seem so patient with everyone. If you would lose it, I don't think you could do what you do. You know, like I couldn't do that. I would blow up on people.
Yeah, I mean, there have been times we've definitely just been like, "You're done."
Okay.
But it doesn't happen that often. Most of the people we work with are pretty good guys, girls, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
I like most of our athletes, and I want to help. Like I want them to win.
Yeah.
And I think that's what puts the pressure on me is I want our stuff to work well. I don't ever want to be the excuse for somebody not being able to do their job.
Yeah. Have you ever been blamed for a loss or a bad result or something?
I remember an XC guy blamed us once. That was 100% their fault, like the dumbest thing ever. Downhill, not really. We've definitely had some issues that we've had to work through and that have been our fault, but I've never had one of our riders be like, "You cost me the run," even though I know we didn't uphold our end of the bargain.
Okay.
Again, like our relationship with 95% of our riders is really good.
Yeah.
Like we put the time into dealing with them, and I think they see that we work hard. So for them to come over and blow up doesn't really happen.
Okay. Cool. All right, let's lighten it up here a little bit. Do some hypotheticals for fun. All right. Every rider gets the same shock. You're in control of what the guts are. It's like Menard gets his tune, Camille gets hers, etc. They have the option to tune spring rate, obviously, and one other attribute of their choice. Rebound, damping, high, low, volume, whatever. Could it work? And if you were in that situation, what attribute would you pick? And what do you think most racers would pick?
If
Like,
I was in
could
that
it be
position,
that simple?
it's funny because it would be that simple as an end result, but everything leading up to that would be 10 times more complicated because you'd have to dial in everything internally to make that one adjustment function.
Okay.
So it's like if everybody had the same shock and weren't able to tune anything, it would not work.
Okay.
But if you're saying, yeah, we can give Cammy her tune and Greg his tune,
Then it's just super complicated.
I would hope everybody would pick Rebound, because without a well-functioning Rebound, everything feels like crap.
Okay. And you feel like you can control compression and the shock well enough across the board, like just kind of generally speaking? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't think, okay, every rider has the same shock, same rebound, like they couldn't get used to it?
I think they could get used to it for sure. I think you can get used to almost anything.
Okay.
I've seen people do incredibly well at World Cups on setups that nobody else could ride. So I know that you can get used to anything. EWS stuff as well. Like there's some wacky stuff out there, and people go fast. I just think it's really a lot of it is mindset. Again, if you're just out there and you're going to crush it and nothing's going to stop you, then you're probably going to ride most things.
Okay, cool.
I think where it comes into play is longevity and consistency. Where if you're always on the edge and your bike's not there to protect you, you're going to crash more than not.
Okay.
Whereas a really good setup can probably buffer that line of crashing, not crashing a little bit better.
Okay, cool. Do you prefer a more complex shocker fork or less?
Again, this is weird for me because less complex externally means it's more complex for me to get it good, right? If I don't have both compressions and both rebounds, the internal valving has to be spot on.
Okay.
Because you can't make those little tweaks.
All right. Okay, cool.
I guess I prefer it to be simple.
But the work to get there is the hard part.
The work to get there is not so simple.
Okay. All right. I want to talk rebound topic since you kind of brought it up, but still. I interviewed Fitzy a while ago, like one of the earlier Inside Lines, and we were talking about rebound and high-speed rebound and riders blaming getting bucked or getting over the bars because your rebound's too fast. And I think we talked about Rampage specifically, and his thought was just like, no, rebound is not why you got bucked. It's because you had a massive compression and nothing the shock is doing is pushing you over. It's just all the force that has to explode out of it. But you, in one of the dials, I think the setup one where you tried to watch, compression and rebound differences in the video, I thought that was pretty sick.
Yeah.
You kind of see it. But you described the rebound as like pushing back at you, which I'd never actually heard it described that way. I'm always hearing it as like, it's how fast your tire gets back to the ground. You want it there quickly for traction, blah, blah, blah. But the idea of it coming back was super interesting. But are people too scared of fast rebound? Like if I'm bucked off a lip or I'm bucked somewhere, is it rebound's fault? Or do you think it's not that powerful?
It is that powerful. Like you could definitely have rebound do some strange things, but it's not just the rebound. There was something else that led to that event, which is maybe there were a few bumps in before this massive event where the rebound was too fast and pushed you over the bars, and then you hit this last one and you weren't in the proper body position, and then the rebound pushed you over. But it's not the devil that most people think it is.
Okay.
And most people that say they're getting bucked are getting bucked from a compression kick more than a rebound kick.
Okay.
And that's one of those things where it comes in of you just saying, well, was that better or worse? So many people come in and they've just slowed rebound down till it's shut. The bike's not even moving. So the first bump you hit, the compression's bottomed out and it stays there. Then you hit the next one and there's no suspension to use and you're going to get kicked. But it didn't happen because your rebound's too fast. It happened because you don't have any suspension left.
Okay.
I think that's way more common than actually getting pushed over the bars from fast rebound.
Okay. Are you a fast or slow rebound kind of guy? Like, do you lean one way or the other?
It's so hard to say I'm fast or slow unless you can put a speed to that number. Okay. Like, that's one of those things everybody's like, oh, I like really fast rebound. Oh, yeah? What velocity is that? Where does fast rebound come in?
Okay.
So I think I'm kind of in the middle. I'm definitely not running it as fast as some of the guys like Amory, but I'm not nearly as quick or as strong physically. I think you have to be way more dynamic on the bike to be able to make a setup like that work.
Okay.
And it can, obviously, but I don't think it's necessarily the right way to do it.
Okay. Cool.
I really feel like rebound's one of those things that there is a right or a wrong. There is definitely a right and a wrong. There's no like, I prefer it this way. It's like a very narrow window of what works best.
Okay. Yeah, man. It's all so dependent on the rider, the bike, the terrain. Like, there's so many things, and it seems like everyone just wants to put it in a box. Like with my question, is fast better than slow?
Right. Yeah, everybody wants it simplified, and I understand, but it's not simple.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I've thought about this, and I don't understand why it can't work. I mean, I do, but why can't we have a trophy truck bike? Okay, so I've got my 5010 over there. It's got a 130 mil fork. Why couldn't I put a 180 mil fork on there and have the first 50 just be super light, doesn't do anything, comes back real fast. You sit in a sag and it's in the same spot and the fork performs the same way as if it was the 130 mil fork. Why wouldn't that work? And obviously understanding that like a trophy truck has a motor behind it, driving it, knowing that like, oh, I want to pop. I don't want to have to jump 2 more inches to get my wheel off the ground. But in certain settings, like, why couldn't you have super crazy, I guess, is it negative travel in a setup like
sag,
that?
Negative travel. Yeah. I think you'd lose.
And is this a dumb question?
No, it's not, because it's making me think, and it's like, well, obviously you can't do that, and then I'm trying to explain why.
Okay.
And it's not that straightforward to explain, but I think most of it comes back to the differential of vehicle mass versus rider mass or pilot mass, however you want to describe it.
Okay.
And you'd lose so much precision, even with a 200 mil travel bike. You have to manage what bumps it hits. Right. With a trophy truck, you're giving suggestions to where it's going, but it's a pretty broad window of what you're running into.
Okay.
And it's got to be able to deal with a lot of that. With a bike, that's not going to happen, right? You couldn't point it down your trail and be within 3 feet of where you want to be and make it down successfully. Whereas a trophy truck's probably within 6 feet of where it wants to be at any given time.
Okay.
And if you took away all that maneuverability from your bike, I think it would be a pretty unfun experience.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. like taking away the playfulness, but I'm just like, could you do it? Or like for the right track, would it work? But yeah.
But not
Okay.
just playfulness, but the ability to put the thing where it needs to be on the fastest line.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. All right. That was out in the weeds, but I figured why not? You're the guy to talk to
No, it's
about
cool. It's a cool question.
Do this is a quick one. Like the Vital forum nerds, they're incredible. Like they'll watch a dialed and see like 4 pixels of something and know that it's prototype or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
do you ever use dialed to leak stuff on purpose, like for you or other brands? Like, have you ever consciously thought about that stuff?
I've consciously thought about it. I don't think that we've ever actually done it.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I'm trying to think if we really haven't used it like that.
And
I was thinking if we did it with that last rad picture, but I think somebody else always catches it first.
yeah. Okay.
One of the photographers will post something.
Are you ever kind of forgetful about how something's, or like how secret something could be? I mean, because I assume like you've been working with stuff we're just getting a leak on. You've been working on with it for a while, and it slips out. You're like, oh crap, that's not supposed to be seen.
Yeah. It hasn't happened that much because we're pretty conscious of how visible my bikes are. But I remember the current generation X2 was on my bike in Andorra 3 or 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Leaned up against the wall out of sight, and somebody leaned inside, took a picture of it, and posted it.
Yeah. Crazy.
And I was just like, how the fuck? A, like, what an asshole. Just, and B, it's like, how did this happen? How do we not even notice that this goes on? And I get that people are interested in all this stuff, and I somewhat understand it, but I also struggle with the side of being a fan and being into the sport, and then also being kind of a sneaky little dick about stuff.
Yeah.
And like actively sneaking around. Like really none of the photographer guys would go behind our backs, take a picture and post something.
Sure. Yeah. But the forum nerds with their phones, they're out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Most of the time it doesn't matter.
Okay. Cool. Do you have a favorite suspension platform to work with? You know, like FSR, VPP, high pivot, some combo? Like, is there one that you like most?
No, I think you can build a good bike with lots of different suspension platforms. I recently posted a picture with Forbidden that I just built up, and everybody's like, oh, is this the future? Is this the only way? Is this? It's like, no, it's just one way of doing things.
Because of the high pivot? Like that's what they're thinking?
Yeah. Yeah. And high pivots are all the rage right now.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to, I mean, I guess Commensal did start the whole high pivot thing, really. I mean, for the masses, like
sure.
When Amory was winning everything, and all of a sudden everybody's building a high pivot bike. And I'm not saying that they're the only ones and that other people haven't been on it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But they were the ones to tip the trend, I think. But it's not the only answer. And you can do an awful lot with a basic 4-bar bike. I think very few people tick all the boxes before they go checking a different design. Like some of the new 6-bar stuff is really cool, and it presents some really interesting possibilities for fine tuning things like anti-squat and anti-rise. But you can also get really close to it with other designs that are far simpler, and most people wouldn't be able to tell. I think the unfortunate thing with the bike world is that there's so many what am I looking for? I'm blanking. There's so many ideas.
Yeah.
Unproven, and it's just, this is the way you do it. It's like, well, are you sure? Because there's a lot of bikes that work really well that are done this way, or done this way, or done this way.
Yeah. And it seems like there's that restlessness of like, that looks like it did last year. Like it can't be any better. And I hate that fallacy. I understand why, you know, people want something new, but it's like, it seemed like we're at a point where stuff's just getting so refined that it doesn't need to look different, does it?
I don't think so. I think people are grasping at straws for difference. And we've always been that business of everything has to look totally different each time it's launched. And I just don't think it's necessary. Like a lot of these bikes with a 1 or 2 millimeter change, you could completely change the way that bike rides, or a slightly different construction in the carbon or aluminum or whatever you're building it out of. And you'd have a completely different bike, but it would look exactly the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's up to all of us to kind of change that process. It's up to manufacturers. It's up to journalists and editorials, and it's up to riders to inform themselves and make choices based on what works.
Yep. Yeah.
It's
a tough
even
one.
in the comments, you see all kinds of stuff. Like somebody will post a picture of a RockShox, right? And then the next comment is like Fox forever, or TVO is the only one. It's like, well, why?
Yeah.
Do what works and pick which one's best for you. It's like none of us really think that somebody else is doing anything so spectacularly different. We're all basically building the same thing. So everybody's just trying to looking at some way to make it stand out.
Yeah.
And it would be cool if that way to make it stand out was performance rather than visual.
Yeah. See, that's that freshness and transparency that, I don't know. I think it's cool you'd say that.
I mean, yeah, I guess. And it has to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
And people know, like, deep down, no matter what kind of marketing speak they're going to barf out, like, they know the case.
I hope so.
Yeah. Seems like it. I don't want to name drop or, you know, out the person, but I saw a pretty high profile rider say dampening in one of the dials. Like what happens if they say that?
I think we'll generally ridicule them for quite a while.
Okay.
It's like everybody that they usually come to our pit and they ask for tokens.
I noticed you always say
on
spacer.
People's moods. Right. It'd be like, oh, no, we don't make tokens. Or we'll just send them straight to RockShox and be like, yeah, go ask those guys.
That's so funny. All right, we'll move along. This is freaking sweet. Have you ever thought about putting a Fitbit on your shock pump? Like just to see how many pumps you do in a year or something like that? Like, and like just watching a dial, you're just like over and over again. Like you have to do 1 trillion of those a year. And is there any cheat code to filling up a shocker fork before the shock pump?
You would think that we could figure out a way to put air in shocks without having to pump 300 times. Sometimes we have a compressor. I don't know. Honestly, that's the dumbest thing. I don't know why we still are using shock pumps. Because by the end of the day, it must be in the thousands.
It sure seems like it. Yeah.
Just yesterday, I was trying to seat a tire. You know, when your rim tape's gone a little funky and you're like, nah, it'll be fine.
Uh-huh.
First it was pumping, and then it was with one of the tire filler bottles. And finally, my pump just blew up because I'd done it like 6 times before I just gave up and put new rim tape on. But I'm sore.
I bet.
Like, it's so stupid. How can there not be a better way? When half our day is spent pumping things up, we could probably figure out.
There you go.
We have some of those floor pumps, but they always just break or something doesn't work. So we always end up back to that little hand pump.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Do you have any pet peeves in your pits?
Oh man. I think we're like half pet peeves. It's all about pet peeves.
What's a massive one?
A token is a pet peeve for sure. Second is coming up and like I've seen you at 4 races and you come up and ask for a basic setup. Like, can you just get me going? Like, you're at a World Cup. Like, I saw you last time.
Yeah.
How am I going to get you going this time?
Again, you're a patient man, Jordi. Yeah.
I think you only see the good stuff. That's why Jake edits so well.
Yeah, I'm sure you must pay him well to keep all the.
Oh man, I've had some rants and they're like, nope, that's not going
in. We'll do the outtakes when you retire.
Yeah, probably will.
All right.
I have to be nice to him for the rest of my life now.
Does your personal bike maintenance take a back seat since, you're working on everyone else's bike?
No, not really. I'm one of those riders, probably a good thing, that is always expecting the next component, tire, shock, whatever, to make them better. So my bikes are usually in pretty good shape, and I cannot deal with crappy stuff or a creak or anything. My bikes are usually, they're not clean ever. I just don't wash bikes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just wears them out. But they're in pretty good shape.
Okay, cool. All right, well, I want to touch on electronics a little bit. I want to talk about ESO, Future of the World Cup, and then we'll go into this kind of rider breakdown sort of thing. But
cool.
You think electronics are the future? Like, do you want a bike that is going to know what you need, like put you out of a job?
Yeah, man, that sounds amazing right now. I could just do it from home. Like, oh, well, it said this, so we're just going to turn up your compression damping, turn down your rebound, and you're good.
That would be pretty sick.
It's definitely the future, one way or another.
Okay.
I'm riding some of our new stuff right now. And the coolest thing about it is that you don't need the electronics. If you forget your battery or do whatever, it works like a really good shock.
Okay.
And then once the electronics are switched on, it's even better. So I don't think there's any way around electronics being involved. I understand everybody's concerns about more batteries and this and that. I mean, I get it. Unfortunately, the e-bikes are a huge segment of the market now, so it's already gone towards electronics. Electronic shifting is awesome.
Yep.
I love the no cables, just bolt stuff on. Like you can have one bike or 5 bikes and one derailleur and shifter.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so cool. So if you can do it in an intelligent way that doesn't detract from the experience, it only adds, then electronics are cool.
Okay, sweet. When I skipped over, does working for a publicly traded company kind of put any kind of pressure on you that might not be there with, a different brand?
Yeah, I'm sure it does. It's been a while, so I'm relatively used to it. I know earlier in my career, I opened my mouth a bit too much a few times and got some calls of you probably shouldn't have done that. But overall, we're pretty open. And other than being chastised for drinking too much a few times, of like, hey, let's tone that down a little bit, which I really don't drink that much. Like, it's become a thing, but it's...
Yeah, because doesn't every season open with some, like, drink montage?
It has, yeah, for sure. Which is just coincidence. Um, like I love a good drink now and then, and I do love a nice after party of, a few people sitting around having drinks after a race. But in general, I try to take my health pretty seriously.
Hmm.
So I think that's really the only thing we've been like, hey, keep an eye on that, And it hasn't been like, you can't drink, you can't do that. It's just been like, hey, pay attention to these things because some people don't like it. And I get it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But other than that, we've been given free reign to kind of do what we want. There's no oversight for Dialed. It gets filmed, edited, and put out without anybody else looking at it.
Yeah. Cool. And
which is
shows.
all on Jake. Well, Jake and Schaefer, I guess they split all editing duties,
Okay.
which is cool. Like they're such different people, but they get along really well. And when you put their two personalities together through the editing process, well, it seems pretty seamless, but they're two completely different visions. And it's really cool how they've made it work.
Yeah, the editing, like their music choices, like classical music in the right spot, and then hip hop here and there.
Yeah.
They just make it flow so well.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, on that front, World Cup 2023, ESO, all this, I don't know, this guesswork that seems to be going on right now. Do you have any insight into what's going to happen next year and thoughts on live stream being pay-per-view? And in addition to that, how does it work for Fox, since you're not a team, you're more of support? Like, do you have to pay the same way like the syndicate would? Like, how does it work for you?
Man. So yeah, I probably don't know any more than most. There's been very little communication with any of this switch over to ESO. I do think that downhill racing, XC racing, that World Cup racing needed a shot of professionalism. That something needed to happen. We've been going to the same venues. We've been doing the same thing. A lot of these venues aren't very good. Something needed to happen. I don't know if this is the right choice.
Okay.
I'm hopeful, but I'm also pretty doubtful.
Do you think it's just
this late?
It was just on autopilot for the last 5 years or however long?
I kind of feel like it was. I know Red Bull did a great job, and they're super passionate about sports and about bike racing in general. But I didn't see anything improving. It just was kind of the same thing every year. And every year you'd hear, oh, we couldn't get in this venue because of this and this. All you heard was why we couldn't do things.
Is that Red Bull or is that UCI though?
That's probably a combination of, that's more UCI, right?
Okay.
UCI shouldn't be putting on events. They're a governing body.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just such a strange industry in general. Like, World Cup racing basically sponsors itself. It's completely incestuous. Like, bike brands and bike companies sponsor bike racing. There's very few other mainstream sports where there are no outside sponsors, or very, very few. And that tells you something, that either the sport isn't supportable or it's mismanaged. Because there has to be money other than Fox, RockShox, Olin's, and then the big bike brands. So I don't really know the answer. It's also not my job to know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
There should be people that are looking into this and trying to figure out how to make this sport progress.
Okay.
And maybe ESO is going to be right. I don't know. Right now, it's just wild that we really don't know much.
Hmm. And
we're still trying to figure out how to get dialed in, like who the media person is.
okay.
So there's a lot of unanswered questions right now.
Okay. How does it work for you then? Are you the same as a trade team as far as like getting pit space, that kind of thing?
Basically, we're like a trade team, yeah.
Okay.
And there's always a tech alley, and you fill out a form just like a trade team would, pay your fees, and set up. And we'll always be together with most of the other tech companies like us, SR, SRAM, RockShox, DT, like all the techs.
Yep. If it's pay-per-view only, do you have any thoughts on that to watch the race next year?
I feel like that would kind of suck.
I think so.
I think it would cut down on. I don't think we're in a position to do that.
Yeah.
I think it would be detrimental to the sport and to viewership to do a pay-per-view.
Are you, or is someone in marketing over there, I don't know, like, are they aware of the numbers? And okay, I don't know what the numbers are, but let's say a free Red Bull webcast had 100,000 views, and now a pay-per-view is going to get 1,000 views. Is that going to make you not want to be involved?
No, I mean, it's not going to make me not want to be involved. At least me personally, because I'm involved. I love the sport, and I love watching and helping these guys do their best.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody up in marketing might end up saying, oh man, this is just not worth our money right now to go to these races when nobody's watching. Because at the end of the day, it is a marketing vehicle, right? If we're putting money in, we're hopefully selling an equivalent amount of product.
Sure.
And whatever people want to say, that's what everybody is doing,
mm-hmm.
is selling themselves. Because if we don't sell product, we don't do cool stuff. So if nobody's watching, who knows? I mean, maybe we continue with these smaller vehicles like Dialed and podcasts and things like that, and that gives them a stepping point because nobody's watching racing.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the right answer.
Yeah, I hope not.
No. Yeah, I don't think that can happen.
Okay. All right. Well, sounds like you're equally in the dark as everyone else. And
everybody.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Hopefully hear something soon.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Before we get to the athlete stuff, are there any tracks that are too gnarly? Like, is Val de Sol pushing it? Is it too brutal?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think Val de Sol timing wise was tough this year because it's end of the year. Everybody's pretty tired. A lot of injuries happening. I think when you talk about dangerous tracks, it's rarely the track itself. It's something somebody has done that's really dumb.
Like in course, like track design?
Yeah, design, or say somebody builds a footbridge with a 90-degree turn and a rubber mat and no safety railing. Just like stuff that you're like, well, would you ride that?
Yeah.
Like, well, no, I wouldn't do it, but these guys are so good. It's just this thoughtless stuff that makes tracks dangerous.
Okay. Yeah, cool. All right. Close out with this athlete kind of breakdown here. Quick and dirty, who's the most anal and who cares the least?
Well, everybody knows the most anal is Greg. There's no question.
Okay.
The one that cares the least is Bernard. And it's not a matter of not caring. It's like, set it up, ride it the rest of the year. Like that whole team, up until this year where they started changing a few things, and Eddie was riding one of our proto shocks and some of the EWSs. But they used to be famous for like each one of them would say they were riding somebody else's settings. Eddie'd be like, "Oh, I'm riding Bernard's settings," and Bernard would be like, "Oh, I'm riding Matt's settings," and then none of them would actually have anybody's settings, and they were all still killing it.
Yeah. Huh, okay. Cool.
But this year they've changed a little bit.
Okay.
But Bernard still hasn't changed anything. He's like, set it up, looks good, done.
Dude, that's gnarly. All right, let's go
And
in.
that shows you how much the rider is a part of the outcome.
Yeah. Okay, he's one of the guys on my list here, so let's just start with him. What do you think clicked for him this year? He's, hearing you say he doesn't mess with setup too much. He's like doing his own vlogs every day at the race. He's running a team, and he's posting up and almost winning. Like, do you think there's more out of the tank for him?
I think so. Yeah, for sure. And I don't know where this came from. I think I asked him a few times too, and he's like, "Man, I don't know." It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
It's clicked. He's always been a phenomenally gifted rider.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the most technically proficient riders in the world. And maybe it's a matter of want, that you just decide that you want to win. But maybe there's other things, maybe a little bit of training or strength or injury recovery. There's so many factors that go into it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so cool how like distracted he seems, and he can still post up.
He's fully ADD. Like,
yeah.
I've never seen him sit still.
And it shows. All right. This is probably my favorite topic, but Jackson versus Jordan. Like, I've never met either of them. I don't know. All I know of them is from the races, and they seem like opposites.
Yeah. Well, I mean, outwardly, yeah.
Okay.
Jackson's full on Canadian superstar Grom, been in front of a camera forever. And Jordan, very quiet, reserved, but they're both at heart incredible competitors and really good kids. Like, they've been such a pleasure to deal with. Jordan's another one that just doesn't change much. I hardly see him.
Wow,
like,
really? I thought he'd be meticulous.
Like, cool. I think he's meticulous, but he knows that his setup is good and that the rest is on him.
Okay.
So just doesn't need it.
Cool. All right. This guy, Dakota. Like, watching him and Dialed and just kind of doing the B practice podcast over here. He seems fairly in tune with what he wants, what he needs, how to describe it. Like, you've seen his progression. What's he like to work with?
Dakota's his own worst enemy. He gets too wound up and too wrapped up in things that aren't going to help him win races. Again, just so talented, hardworking, strong, but a little bit scattered. Just needs to focus and relax. And I think that he could be far more consistent.
Okay. They've said that they have a new version of their bike. Like, they kind of tease it on Instagram and stuff. My thought was, why guys changing something when it seems like you've just found success? But he seemed to think there's no problem with that. Do you have any thoughts on stuff like that? Like, just staying consistent versus always chasing something new?
I'm a big fan of consistency.
Okay.
I mean, look at Jordan and Matt Walker on that Saracen.
Yeah.
Like, that's a single pivot linkage driven bike. It's about as simple as you can get. And it's winning races. I'm not saying that everybody should just ride the same thing all the time, but there is something to be said for predictability and consistency.
Okay, cool. All right, what do we at here? Camille versus Miriam battling, and you seem to be a Cami fan in the dialed stuff. And I hear, like, oh, she takes it easy. She's not really risking it. Do you think that's fair to say? Because, I mean, she raced with, her broken collarbone or whatever happened. And at the end, she showed like ridiculous grit. But
It's just what he does.
man,
I think he enjoys hassling me as well.
yeah, there's some
It,
fun in there, huh?
it, it again, it takes, if he's always focusing on something else, it takes that stress off of the day.
Yep.
And he's been responsible for some of the better things we've done, I think. And he pushes us to do better work.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times his feelings don't make any sense, but there's always something. It's always rooted in some type of accuracy.
Okay.
Like, don't discount him.
Yeah.
He might be wrong, but he's right somewhere else.
Okay. Does he really run, 7 or 8 volume spacers?
Yeah.
How many can you run?
I don't know. I don't think he can run that many.
Okay.
I'm pretty bad with like, well, how many can I? I don't know.
Yeah. Put more in. Why not?
What is the max pressure? I don't know.
All right. This guy, Omri. He's
Another one.
Like, dude,
Yep.
he's so gnarly.
Yeah. I mean, really everybody in that top 5 group is unreal. Again, probably good at whatever they'd want to do. So strong, so gifted. And that team is probably one of the most dialed programs out there.
Hmm.
They have a ton of support. They have the same mechanics. Everybody comes back. Everything's pretty conducive to doing well.
Does he push it too far? Like, I don't know, hear stories of him like he rung his bell pretty hard and he keeps racing. Like, do you ever worry about that kind of thing?
I worry about it a lot. Yeah. I mean, I can't worry about it specifically, and I'm not going to push these guys to, it's not really my job to tell them to chill out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not really true. I guess it is in a bit. Some of them are friends. A lot of them are friends. So, but what are you going to do other than say, hey, are you sure? Oh, I passed the protocols and this and that. But yeah, I think every top athlete pushes themselves too far. Like they're giving up some type of longevity for success. And I don't think there's any sport where you're not doing that.
Yeah.
Some are probably worse than others, but it's just how it is.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Okay, we touched on him a little bit, but Nico and his program, what do you think about what he's been doing?
I think it's awesome. I think it's educating everybody in the industry that things can be done in a straightforward, simple way and get good results. Right? And his marketing is completely reality based. There's no smoke and mirrors about this frame. It's a 4-bar bike that was built by some old dude on the East Coast and drawn up by Nico and with help from a few other people. And it works.
Yeah.
And it probably works better than a lot of high dollar bikes.
Yeah.
But his platform is like, here, I can do this, and this thing works for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool to see. I'm curious to see what the future holds.
Same. I'm a huge Nico fan. Like, he's just such a good, solid person.
Yeah. And does anyone work harder? Like, I don't know.
I doubt it. I couldn't spend more than a couple of days with him. I'd be dead.
All right. Gwin. climbing back up. Think he's got
He
it?
is.
What's he been like?
Oh, I know he's got it. He's definitely been a bit different. I think he's feeling that ability come back to him. I think he's another one of those guys that just got involved with so many different things
Hmm.
that it detracted a bit from his racing. And I don't think it's even something that you necessarily notice. It's just you get in there and all of a sudden you realize that you haven't quite prepared like you should have. He's always been an interesting one as well. Like through his whole career, he's never really traveled other than racing.
Yeah.
You know, all the European-based guys, even Nico, Luca, they're always in Europe and they're doing other events and they're practicing on European tracks. Aaron's never done that.
Yeah.
So I think it's harder to stay competitive when that's your platform. So
Why do
the
you think
fact that
he was
he's
able to
still
do it?
competitive,
Why do you think he was able to do it so well early?
I think it's evolution as it always is. Like he was one of the first guys to come in and be that strong.
Hmm.
Right. A lot of the guys were plenty fit, but they weren't training like Aaron was.
Hmm.
And when you watch his wins, a lot of them were just like brute force. I don't know if you remember that Wyndham win. It was like 10 seconds over a 2.5-minute track.
Yeah.
That was just like, that's not possible.
Yeah.
And that was just sheer strength.
Hmm.
And who was he racing? He was, dealing a lot with Bryceland at the time and still Greg, who are just different riders. But I think gradually that strength and speed and training focus has shifted. So it's just that natural progression of everybody stepping up to whoever's the best at the time.
Hmm.
And now you look at that top 5, top 10 even, everybody's just gnarly fit.
So close. Yeah.
Like ridiculous.
Hmm. Yeah. And the fact that it's literally tenths all the time that's determining positions.
It's wild.
That one always interests me to see how close the times are, but everyone has different lines. They're on different equipment, but it doesn't matter. They're all this far apart. Like that.
Yeah.
That to me is just bonkers.
It's super cool though. Like how can you pick this random stretch of dirt with 20 different bikes, different suspension, different riders, and everybody's within, a second for the top 10?
Yeah.
Sometimes. But yeah, it's wild that, even EWS, you look at times at the end of the day,
there's
and sometimes there's a second. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's super crazy. Well, we glitched out. We didn't quite cross the finish line, but we got really close. I'll add this to the video and get it on there. But yeah, I guess we're not doing the live chat questions since it conked out. Yeah, I can't figure out to see it. It's supposed to be up there. Like I was kind of glancing as they were going by, and a lot of it was just kind of poking fun and seeing what's up and stuff. There wasn't anything super crazy, so maybe next time. I think we should
have to do another one.
I think should bring you on like kind of preseason and see where you're at and do this again.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Preseason will be weird because it's so late and we don't know what we're doing.
I know. What do you think about that? Are you going to focus on like US stuff for the first till June?
Maybe. It's really hard to focus on US stuff. It's just not. It's not at that level yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll probably do a couple training camps instead and try to do a nice, because we weren't able to do one this year because of how weird the schedule was.
Mm-hmm.
We did it in Dunkeld, but it was kind of condensed and it wasn't, not ideal. It was good, but not perfect. So be good to have one at a real World Cup track.
Cool. Yep. All right. We'll close it off with this one. If you could bring back any former pro downhiller in their heyday to throw in now, who would you put out there?
Damn. I think Ancaro and Nico would be two that would be, I think, very similar in their approach to racing. And it would be interesting especially with today's knowledge, because Nico is always known as the tinkerer and the guy that was deep involved in the tech stuff.
Yeah.
But bike racing was it was in its infancy at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And bikes were probably quite bad. At least the ones I rode were not great. So it would be cool to see what his feedback would be from him. I know he's still riding modern bikes and he's still doing some enduro stuff, but it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah. Do you think he wouldn't be as far ahead with everyone in their knowledge now?
I don't think he would be, unless he was just that much better than everybody.
Yeah.
But the sport has changed. The speeds have changed substantially. And riders, just looking at riders' physiques, the changes have been pretty dramatic in the last 10 years.
Hmm.
I think it would be hard to compete.
Yeah, agreed. Cool. I think we'll wrap it up. Is there anything else you want to touch on, or like anything you were hoping to talk about that we didn't?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Killer. Thanks so much.
I'm bummed for you that thing died, but
that's okay. It's all learning process, and
yeah,
I haven't really seen anyone else try to do this.
I haven't either.
So I figure, why not? Let's go for it.
Yeah.
We'll be the Nico of today, and in 10 years, I'm gonna be this. Cool. Thanks so much. It's been awesome to get to know you a little bit, and yeah, hope to see you out at a race or something, or come down to Santa Cruz. Who knows? So
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.